Hello, this is Nima Golbai on KUCI 88.9 Irvine. Today we have another sub-show on Rollercoaster in the Clouds because unfortunately I had to take my dog to the vet, and the only appointment I could get that was closest was Wednesday at 9:30, and this show ends at 9, so just not enough time for me to get to the vet with my dog. So we're going to be doing a sub-show pre-recorded, and I'm going to do the X-Men Trilogy, X-Men X2, and X-Men The Last Stand for you today. And I have my IMDb open, and let's get into it. So, X-Men, which released in 2000, was sort of one of the early outings of a big superhero film that wasn't kind of complete trash. You know, of course they did some of these in the 90s and 80s, but they were almost all flops. But I think X-Men was maybe the best up until its time, I guess. I think it was the best at its time. Although I could be wrong about that. I'm not 100% sure. And my history with the X-Men is I watched it probably once when I was 5 or 6. I don't even know if I saw X2, but I'm sure I did. And I did not watch it for probably a long time, maybe like 15 plus years. I did not rewatch these movies to my memory. And I rewatched it in like 2022 or something, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I rewatched it again just a few days ago, and I loved it even more. And it kind of shattered some of my or like my stereotypes about this film that I even thought was true even after rewatching it just a few years ago. And those stereotypes were that, like, it's an early outing of a superhero film. It's kind of, not as good as stuff that came later, or, just a little bit rough around the edges, cheesy, unserious. Well, there is some one-liners that might be cheesy, a little cheesy, not too bad, and maybe the CGI isn't as good. I think in general it is at the same level or at times better than a lot of the Infinity Saga content. Uh, of course, the Infinity Saga really peaked in like certain areas, like, thinking Avengers 1, Infinity War, Endgame, Iron Man 1, Captain America, Winter Soldier. So some of those ones were absolutely amazing. However, I put X-Men up there with some of those ones, like Winter Soldier. I really would. And I think in general it's just underrated in terms of its rating. It's like on Rotten Tomatoes, it's probably in the 80s. I think it should be like high 80s, low 90s. And yeah, it's just nice to see a superhero movie done with kind of a lot of care and not just focusing on a big action scene, which I definitely think is the weakest part of the film. The action scene at the end was probably the least interesting and well done scene, but let's just get into it. Actually, no, we got to talk about directing and acting. It's directed by Bryan Singer, who's an amazing director who made The Usual Suspects. Sorry. He made The Usual Suspects, which is one of my favorite movies. You can definitely tell this is directed by a guy who's kind of a little bit better than a lot of people that typically direct superhero movies. You see a lot more use of practical effects, some more powerful scenes, just general cleaner direction, shots, all that. And it has an absolutely star-studded cast. Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen are sort of the the veterans, but then you got Hugh Jackman, who's amazing as Wolverine, Famke Janssen as Jean Grey, great. Cyclops was good. I liked Rogue. I think she's a very cool character. Halle Berry, I think she's amazing in this. Um, Mystique's character was played well, and the minor character of Toad was also played by um, it was played by Ray Park, which if you don't know is um, he plays Darth Maul. Okay, so let's get into it now. Let's go to the plot synopsis. Let me see. There it is. So, it starts with a kind of like a flashback scene, but not exactly a flashback. It just takes place like decades before the film. In 1944, in a concentration camp, a 13-year-old boy is separated from his parents. The parents are taken into the concentration camp, but the boy is kept outside as the kids are to be taken off to a different section. When he tries to get back in after the gates have been closed, he is restrained by 4 guards. The gates suddenly start to curl in towards the group, as though attracted by a magnetic force. The boy is knocked unconscious by another guard. So, this is a very good scene, but if you're watching for the first time, you don't know why this is being shown. But then it becomes sort of clear immediately after, or at least it does as you keep watching. So we cut to the present day, and a 17-year-old girl named Marie is studying with her boyfriend at their house. They hug and kiss, and then he basically starts convulsing and almost dies because of her mutant ability to absorb power and life force of others. She screams, and her mother arrives, terrified. She doesn't allow anyone to touch her, and she decides to leave her home. One thing I like about X-Men and X2 is there are like some like semi-horror elements. Even in The Last Stand there are. And it kind of makes for some powerful, memorable moments. And this is one, it seems very shocking that she just kisses her boyfriend, and I thought he died in the beginning, but apparently he just went into a coma and then recovered. Then we cut to Congress, where Senator Robert Kelly attempts to pass a Mutant Registration Act, which would force mutants to publicly reveal their identities and abilities. The mutations are triggered at puberty under conditions of heightened emotional stress. Kelly says that mutants have the ability to walk through walls, and some can even control the minds of other humans. Nearby telepathic mutant Charles Xavier sees Lencher, who goes by the name Magneto, in attendance and is concerned with how he will respond to the Registration Act. Magneto begins his plans to level the playing field between humans and mutants. So, this scene, it should become clear to you if you watch closely that the boy in the concentration camp is Magneto of the modern day. And basically, it's meant to be like a comparison of like how, a genocide is formed with like first creating lists and finding people and sort of scapegoating, and fear turns into hate. Or what's the line from Yoda? Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. That's sort of the allegory and the comparison in X-Men to the Holocaust, where there's a lot of fear from humans about people that are different than them, and it creates an urge to use violence to sate those fears. And the difference is, of course, in this case, they're mutants with superpowers. And Magneto wants to fight. but Charles Xavier is sort of more optimistic that the humans can be um, brought on side and there can be peace. So we cut to a bar in Canada where Marie, the girl that almost killed her boyfriend, who now goes by Rogue, meets Logan, aka Wolverine, at a local bar in Canada. Rogue's mutation makes her temporarily assume the powers of any mutant she touches, while Wolverine possesses superhuman hearing abilities, heightened senses, and metal claws. It's healing abilities, not hearing abilities. The claws extend outwards from his knuckles. So there's a great scene where Wolverine sort of gets attacked by a human in the bar and defends himself. No one gets killed. He drives off, but it turns out that Rogue is hiding away in he's like in an RV that's pulling I don't know what they're called, but it's like those things on the back of RVs that carry supplies. That's where she's hiding. And or Wolverine gets out of the car and sees her and is like, you gotta get out, and leaves her in the cold, but then he stops and lets her in. So this starts this is kind of like Wolverine's kind of like the bad boy of the group, kind of like Han Solo. He's kind of like an unwilling hero, a little bit rough around the edges, can be a bit immoral at times, but at the end of the day, he's like a good person. He's just a little bit, he's just not good at being part of a team and not just sticking out for himself. So kind of like Han Solo a lot. I like those characters a lot. Han Solo, Wolverine, amongst others. I just can't think of them off the top of my head, especially when I'm doing a show. And suddenly they are attacked by Sabretooth, a mutant, and associate of Magneto. Then Cyclops and Storm come and save them, and they bring them to the mansion in Westchester County, New York, where Charles Xavier is basically leading a school of mutants who are trying to seek peace with the human race. They educate young mutants in the responsible use of their powers and stop Magneto from starting a war with humanity. So it's like Hogwarts for mutants. And I do like the concept of this, and I find it very noble and admirable to teach people with great power to control it. I think it's very cool. And I guess it skips the scene where I'm just reading the synopsis. It's skipping the scene where Logan sort of wakes up and Jean Grey is kind of trying to take his blood because he's on a hospital bed in the facility, and he wakes up and wants to kill her because he's kind of animalistic, and he's kind of smitten by her already. And he talks to the professor, and Xavier asks him to stay while he investigates this whole situation where Magneto appears to be wanting to capture the Wolverine. Meanwhile, Rogue enrolls in the school as a new pupil and develops a crush on the chirokinetic, so he can freeze stuff, mutant named Bobby, also known as Iceman. And this is a good relationship, and it is compelling, the fact that she can't bump into anybody, let alone kiss anybody or hold their hand. Abducted by Mystique and Toad, Senator Kelly, who is the one that wanted to pass the Mutant Registration Act, is brought to Magneto at their hideout on an uncharted island of Genosha. Magneto uses Kelly as a test subject for a machine powered by his magnetic abilities that generates a field of radiation, which induces mutations in normal humans. Though Kelly manages to escape imprisonment with his new abilities, he basically is turned into a fish man that can kind of squeeze through the metal bars and swim to shore and stuff. And this is an interesting little plan Magneto has to turn humans into mutants to remove their hostility from the unknown and make the mutant cause their own. So Rogue visits Logan during the night while he's having a nightmare. Startled, he accidentally stabs her, but she manages to absorb his healing ability by touching his face, and she manages to survive. Rogue is convinced by Mystique, disguised as fellow schoolmate and love interest Bobby, that Xavier is angry with her and that she should leave the school. Having left ahead of Storm and Cyclops, Logan finds Rogue on a train and convinces her to return. Before they can leave, Magneto arrives, incapacitates Logan, and subdues Rogue, revealing it was her whom he wants rather than Logan. So Magneto wants Rogue. The reasons remain kind of unclear, but it's related to his machine. Though Xavier attempts to stop him by mentally controlling Sabretooth, he is forced to release his hold as Magneto threatens police who have converged on the station. This is like one of the coolest scenes in the movie. Of course, it's not done well by the synopsis, but all the cops pull their guns out and Magneto just grabs their guns and turns it on them. And it's a very aura scene, and it's why he's such a great villain. Not only that he's cool, but also that he has a point. A lot of the arguments he makes are true, and he ends up being right in the end. That, they're never going to accept who they are, so they have to fight. And, he does a lot of bad things in certain times, but, at his core, he is kind of right, and his paranoias are pretty justified. So they escape, and Senator Kelly arrives at the school, and Xavier reads his mind to learn about Magneto's machine. Realizing the strain of powering it nearly killed him, the X-Men deduce that he intends to transfer his powers to Rogue and use her to power it at the cost of her life. So it's kind of like a sacrifice of a mutant to spread the mutation. Kelly's body rejects his mutation and his body dissolves into liquid, killing him. The X-Men learn that Magneto is severely weakened during the test of the machine, and also they figure out through the death of the Senator that Magneto doesn't realize that he's going to kill everybody he does this to. And they also figure out that he plans to use it on a summit of world leaders assembling in New York, and basically he wants to turn world leaders into mutants so they protect mutant rights. And yeah, so it's a pretty good plan. Also, they're all going to die, but he doesn't really know that. And it's possible that the range of the machine would hit New York too, so he could kill millions of people by accident. Wolverine returns, and sorry, never mind. I skipped something. Xavier attempts to use Cerebro to locate Rogue, but falls into a coma because Mystique basically put a poison in the device. Jean Grey fixes it and uses Cerebro to find Magneto's machine on Liberty Island, and they deduce they're using it on the World Leaders Summit there. So this is sort of the first time you see Jean Grey becoming more powerful. Her character is basically kind of this gradually unveiling superhero where she seems kind of benevolent at first, but she grows in power, and then she eventually turns into the villain in the last film. Hopefully we have enough time to get to that. We're already 20 minutes into the show. Just going to get a drink of water here. Sorry. But yeah, this is like the first time when Jean Grey does something that supposedly she's not able to do, which is use Cerebro. So it shows she is powerful, but her powers are kind of muted. Then they basically go to Liberty Islands to find Magneto's machine. Magneto transfers power to Rogue. Um, Part of her hair goes white. Um, there's some great fight scenes. I actually do really like the end fight scene, even though I said it's the weakest of the movie. And they basically fight and they win. And sort of the best part of the, or the, no, I don't want to act like the action wasn't great. It was really good, but one of my favorite things is how this movie ends. It ends with like Logan being told by Xavier that he searched Wolverine's mind because Wolverine has no idea like how he became Wolverine. He doesn't remember his past. So Xavier uses his telepathic ability to try to unlock those secrets, and he says that he should go to a military base near Alkali Lake. And there he will find some answers. And then that's sort of a cliffhanger for the next film. And then Xavier visits Magneto in his plastic prison, and the two play chess, and it's a great ending. And Magneto's like, "Don't you worry, Charles, that one day they will pass that foolish law, or one just like it, coming for you and your children." And it's a great little chess match, both chess and verbally. And Xavier is like, "I do worry about it, and I, feel sorry for whoever comes to that school looking for trouble." And it's a great ending, and it's actually beautifully shot. The plastic prison is a gorgeous set piece done with beautiful music. No hideous CGI. It's done so tastefully and properly. Okay, but that was X-Men 1. I'd actually give this movie, believe it or not, a 9 out of 10. 9.0. I rate on a 100-point scale, so 9.1, 2, 3, 4. You get it. And I give this a 9.0, which is really strong. And many people may disagree with me on that. I think the movie's underrated. I think it's very great, or very good, and like sort of entry level great film. Directed very well, great acting, very entertaining. I love it. And watch it because it's sort of just a movie people ignore in the superhero genre. Okay, let's go to the next film. I'm talking a lot. All right. Oh, one of the reviews sort of sums it out good. He says intelligent and significant. That's a good way to say it. Okay, X2. X2 is kind of like the shinier brother or sister of the X-Men original. I'd give this a 9.1, although I'm not 100% sure it's better than the first one, but it's close. Either way, I'd give it a slightly higher score, 9.1. This movie continues the great acting, and it also just continues the iconic, scenes. But I think it adds some like really good action scenes that the first one didn't have as much of. The main new characters are Brian Cox's William Stryker, who's a really, really good villain that, like I said, has that kind of horror vibe. Played by a fantastic actor. And then we got Alan Cummings, Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler. He's also a good character. I believe Alan Cumming was in Eyes Wide Shut. I'm pretty sure. Eyes Wide Shut. I would love to be an actor. I never really realized it until like I'd say like a few years ago, but I really think that if I was to have like one of my dream jobs, it's not my dream job. Only one person knows my dream job other than myself. But one of my dream jobs, if I was to have one, would be an actor. I think it's such a fun job and an opportunity to like sort of like sort of like um really impart something to other people and sort of become a memory in history so you're not forgotten. However, the problem is I don't have an acting ability. At least I don't think I do. Well, no, I don't. However, perhaps with training I could be, but I think the ship has sailed on that. I did take an acting class, only a few lessons when I was quite young, but I didn't have talent then, and I still don't now. But I think perhaps if I continued with it, who knows, maybe I would have actually become an actor. That would be so fun. That would be so weird and so fun. Alright, enough about me. X2. This is another good review. The guy says a darker, deeper dive into mutant kind. Very good. Nice little review there. So the film starts out with a bang, and essentially you're in the White House, and this teleporting mutant is jumping around the White House, beating people up. To the background of like really epic classical music, and he's like about to like stab the president with a knife that says mutant rights, and he is last minute shot by a Secret Service agent. Wolverine heads to Alkali Lake but finds nothing. So this is the military base that Charles Xavier sent him to go to, but the base is all abandoned, and he just returns to the school, reunites with Rogue, and her boyfriend Iceman. And it's good to see Rogue again. I think she's a very compelling character. I genuinely enjoy her character because it's such a tragic superpower. One thing I enjoy about the X-Men, specifically the original trilogy, I think the rebooted continuity, as good as it is with like First Class and Days of Future Past, I think the problem with those movies is it walked back what I loved about the first three, and they're the really distinct superpowers, many of which were not superpowers, they were like handicaps. I really like that Rogue's superpower is just really tragic, and she's like a prisoner basically in her own body, and it's so sad. And she's not the only one. Even the ones like that have like genuine abilities but like look very strange, like that doesn't seem like a superpower at some time, because people will just treat you like a monster if you look like an animal, like Hank McCoy, or Raven to a lesser extent because she can transform. Or Nightcrawler, who's like kind of looks like almost like I think he looks kind of like a panther, like a sneaky panther. Anyway, so yeah, so Cyclops, Storm, and Jean Grey are also there, and he reunites, and the romance between him and Jean is still there, but he can't really do anything because obviously Jean is dating Cyclops. He is requested by Professor Xavier to watch over the children at the school, while Storm, Jean, Storm and Jean find a Nightcrawler with the help of the Professor and Cerebro. Cyclops and the Professor visit Magneto in his plastic prison to see if he had any part in the attack on the President. Reading Magneto's mind, the Professor discovers that a covert government operative known as William Stryker has been extracting information from Magneto. A trap is sprung, and Cyclops and the Professor are captured using basically a gas that knocks them out. And captured by Stryker and his assistant Yuriko Oyama. And it's kind of clear from the beginning that she's probably a mutant. Who's she played by? She kind of looks like the lady from Rush Hour 2, but I guess she's not. I guess not. A military raid then takes place simultaneously on the mansion, and the soldiers basically are trying to capture all the kids with a sedating agent. However, the plan backfires when Wolverine strikes back and kills a large number of Stryker's men. Now, this is a fantastic action scene with some really cool and iconic imagery. I like how Wolverine does one shot where he kind of like lunges from a elevated location on the soldiers, and it's very animalistic, very cool. And then Wolverine confronts Stryker, and it's sort of like him meeting his father, but he doesn't really know who he is. But Stryker knows who Wolverine is. So Stryker takes 6 children captive, and Wolverine and the rest of the kids escape through a secret passage. Impersonating Senator Robert Kelly and Yuriko, Mystique gains information about Magneto's prison and provides a means for him to escape. This is a really good scene. Essentially, what happens is Mystique finds one of the prison guards and is impersonating a very attractive woman and finds him at a bar and seduces him, and then she knocks him out with a drug and then injects him with something. And then we cut to the prison and we're kind of confused about what happened, but Magneto is like, there's something different about you. And he's like, too much iron in your blood. And then he literally pulls metal out of the guy's body and kills him. And he uses that metal to escape and fly out of the prison. And it's a very, very clever scene. And it's very epic and very aura. Everything about Magneto is very cool. He seems to be a very stylish villain. Kind of like the Joker. Or like Darth Vader or someone. And then basically Wolverine with Rogue, Iceman, and Pyro head to Iceman or Bobby's house. And after a 911 call from Bobby's brother Ronnie, the police arrive, and Pyro basically has a power trip and begins to attack the cops. And Rogue prevents him from doing further damage by temporarily taking his powers. The jet powers up the X-Jet and arrives to pick them up, and they are quickly targeted by 2 Air Force fighter jets. They manage to force the pilots to eject with the help of Storm and Jean Grey. However, they hit by a missile which threatens to crash them. Only due to the sudden interference of Magneto do they survive. X-Men team up with Magneto and Mystique. This is a very cool scene because it's like, oh man, we got Magneto on side. This is really cool. And he kind of comes in like a savior. And this is about the halfway point of the movie, or about an hour in, and I would say this is like the last act. It's got a very long last act for a movie. It's about an hour long. Happens at the halfway point. Now Magneto has learned Stryker orchestrated the attack on the president and has been experimenting on mutants using a drug directed injectly into the back of their neck to control them. And that's how he was getting information out of Magneto. He was drugging him. And that's how he has this woman who's his assistant. He's drugging her. And basically, Stryker is okay with mutants as long as he controls them like slaves. Jean reads Nightcrawler's mind and determines that Stryker's base is located at Alkali Lake. So essentially, the attack on the president from Nightcrawler was like a setup by Stryker in order to create like a war between the humans and the mutants to exterminate them. So, yeah, it's inside the dam underground. Oh no, it's just inside the dam, I think. Where he plans to kill the world's mutants by building a second Cerebro, which he got from the raid on the mansion in New York. He's going to use his son, Jason, to gain control over the professor. Jason is Stryker's son, and he has mind control powers. But basically, Stryker is controlling his son, who's going to control the professor, and he's going to use the professor through Cerebro to kill every mutant in the world. It's sort of like a very, very great plan. It's like a very clean extermination of the mutants. A very cool plan, because it's sort of like alluded to, I think, earlier in X-Men 1 and X2, that like this Cerebro machine in the wrong hands could mean like a lot more than just like finding people. Like you can find them and kill them. So, and this is a very dark scene that makes Stryker look like a even worse person, because his son is a mutant, and essentially he sent the mutant to Charles to say like cure him, but Charles couldn't do it, and now he's like said like my son is dead, and he's using him as like essentially like a slave that he controls his mind and just gets him to do this job. And it's very dark and quite disgusting. And it's a very, very good villain. One of the best superhero villains ever, actually. He kind of had like a more grounded air to him. Like he doesn't have superpowers. He's just a regular guy. He's just a very bad person. But it's cool that a guy with regular abilities can fight these gods almost. So his son gains control over the professor. His son is able to project powerful visions in the mind, blinding a person to reality. And through this, the professor is brainwashed to use Cerebro and to kill all mutants. Mystique is able to infiltrate Stryker's base by impersonating Wolverine. This is a very cool scene where like Stryker's like, I know my own work, and they all turn on Mystique. Storm and Nightcrawler search for the kidnapped students. Jean, Magneto, and Mystique are attacked by a brainwashed Cyclops while trying to rescue Professor X, and in the process cause damage to the generators. They keep the dam from collapsing. The force of Jean's telekinetic blast awakens Cyclops from his brainwashing, and Wolverine simultaneously finds Stryker in an adamantium smelting room along with Yuriko, who is revealed to be Lady Deathstrike, basically the female Wolverine that Stryker has created as like a twin to Wolverine. She looks like straight up like a Mortal Kombat character. The gray eyes are a little bit crazy though, I'm gonna be honest. And Wolverine manages to defeat her in a very cool scene where he like grabs the pump of adamantium and just like sticks it into her chest or like her stomach, and he just pumps her full of metal and it like comes out of her eyes. Very cool. Storm and Nightcrawler find the children and break them out of their cell. Magneto and Mystique manage to kill the rest of Stryker's men by setting off their grenades, which cause a leak in the dam. And Magneto stops Jason and the Professor before the mutants are killed. While disguised as Stryker, Mystique uses Jason to convince the Professor to kill all humans. So Magneto at this point is like, no, I'm still the villain here. And he uses it to turn the tables on the humans and try to exterminate them. Along with their new initiate Pyro, they use Stryker's helicopter to escape Alkali Lake, basically stranding the rest of the X-Men. And they change Stryker to concrete rubble as the dam is collapsing. Meanwhile, Nightcrawler teleports Storm inside of Cerebro, where she creates a snowstorm to free the Professor from his telepathic illusion. They all then flee the base as the water engulfs it, only to discover that Magneto, Mystique, and Pyro, who had earlier been convinced by Magneto to join them, had escaped on the helicopter. This is a fantastic ending. Essentially, they're stranded. There doesn't seem to be any way of getting out. Fortunately, Iceman and Rogue arrive with the X-Jet, but it basically has been severely damaged. They can't lift off. The thrusters are down. So you really think it's all over here. But then Jean sort of, and this is her final, act where you see how powerful she is. She gets out and she uses her telekinetic wall to block them from the water and lifts the jet, allowing it to lift off, sacrificing herself for the team. Very good. I loved it. It's a really cool, powerful ending. And a great character that is diminished by the next film. The X-Men then are able to supply the President with the files from private offices of Stryker. The next scene returns. Oh wait, no, this it skipped the scene between Wolverine and Stryker. So Wolverine is carrying a kid that was held captive by Stryker, and he finds Stryker alone, chained to a concrete. And Stryker's like, come with me and let me go and I'll tell you everything you want to know. And he says something like, you're going to go with that freak, referring to the kid. And Wolverine is sort of puts aside his hatred and says I'll take my chances with the kid. Not, directly killing Stryker. And he walks away from him. It's a really good scene. Anyway, the X-Men are able to supply the President with the files from Stryker's private offices. The next scene, the war with the humans is staved off. The next scene is returning to school with Professor Xavier, Cyclops, and Wolverine talking about Jean's past. While they leave, Wolverine tells Cyclops that Jean made a choice and that she chose him, which relieves Cyclops a good deal. The film ends with a voiceover by Jean Grey on the process of evolution, a speech originally made by the Professor in the first film. The camera floats over Alkali Lake, showing a vague shape of a phoenix flying above it, hinting at her survival. So we got about 17 minutes, and we got to do the last film. X2, great film. First two movies, stunning cinema. And then you got, unfortunately, a film I would like to call good ideas, terrible execution. Do I think this is a bad movie? No, I don't. Do I think it's a bad movie compared to the first two? Yes, I do. It's kind of like Godfather 3. If you watch Godfather 3 by itself, it's not a terrible film. It really isn't. Is it great? No. It's pretty good. Likewise, you watch this film, does it compare to the other two? No, it doesn't. But on its own, is it bad? No. It's just kind of a pretty good superhero film. First mistake of this film, switch the director from Bryan Singer to Brett Ratner. Brett Ratner is clearly less talented. It was shot a lot worse. Still competent, but not anything special or unique. Give me 1 second. My dog's barking. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. Um, I don't even know where we left off, but suffice to say, X-Men: The Last Stand is bad execution of pretty good ideas and just directed worse overall. The other big problem is the dialogue is just. I had the feeling that these people that I had watched have such good chemistry together in the past two films. I felt like they didn't know who each other were anymore. It just felt very wooden. I didn't know what was going on between them. They didn't know. It was just messed up. So, like I said, this film has some good ideas, so it might sound better than it is in the synopsis, and I suspect it will because it's got decent ideas. We have a flashback scene in the 1980s where Professor X and Magneto meet a young girl, Jean Grey, at her parents' house and invite her to join the school. Jean's parents believe she's sick, and they are only too happy to be rid of her. Jean has the makings of a powerful Category 5 mutant. When she demonstrates she could levitate the cars with her mind in her neighborhood. 10 years later, a young Warren Worthington tries to cut off his wings. His father, Warren Worthington II, is horrified to find his son is a mutant. This is a really disturbing scene that I actually remembered this from childhood. This scene scarred me. He's trying to like cut off his wings. I don't know if it's because I have a fear of losing limbs, but this scene is very bad in the sense that it's scarring. The next scene opens with X-Men situated in a battle against a giant robot, and it turns out to be a simulation. But this was kind of cheesy. They were just like, like cracking quips, and it's all just fun. And then it was like, oh, you weren't working as a team, Logan, Storm says. What happened to Storm in this movie? Storm used to be so cool, and then she wasn't. And then Logan is just like a wooden robot for some reason now. Everyone is just a robot. Beast, who's Hank McCoy, runs the Department of Mutant Affairs, and basically there's good relations with the government. Mystique is under custody from the U.S. government, kept in a mobile prison. She is caught stealing top secret information with details of a vaccination for mutants. Basically, there's a mutant cure. And it's supposedly going to be like voluntary, but then it turns out like, oh no, it's not really voluntary because the government has already pre-weaponized it and they're going to use it against mutants. And essentially, you know how Magneto is going to react to this. He's going to say like, look, they're going to forcefully like sterilize us basically and like not make us mutants anymore. And obviously this is not going to go well. Many are horrified with the announcement, but like Rogue is kind of interested in it because her superpower is kind of like a huge curse, and I don't blame her. In response to the news, X-Men adversary Magneto raises an army, warning his followers that the cure will be forcefully used to exterminate the mutant race, which he's right about, let's be honest. Magneto reestablishes the Brotherhood of Mutants with those who oppose the cure, warning they'll be This is so... I don't like to get into politics on this show, but like there's like a danger in like making political allegories where like I can see like some like... And I'm not saying one way or the other should a vaccine be forced or not, but like I can see like some like really intense anti-vaxxer like watching this and be like, this is just what happened during COVID. But like in one case you lose your identity, in the other you don't. I don't know. I rarely do this on my show. Had to drink some water there. But like, that's the problem with political stuff in movies. Like people always like want to make it about them. But don't overdo the allegory thing. It doesn't go well. Listen to J.R.R. Tolkien's opinions on allegory. They're pretty good. Okay, in the scene where Magneto breaks out Mystique, there's a really powerful scene where she jumps in front of a bullet filled with the cure and saves him from being, I'm going to say sterilized because I like the term. I know it's not what that word usually means, but kind of what it is. And it's kind of sad he just abandons her because she lost her powers. I'm not 100% sure if Magneto would do that, though. I know he's really like us versus them, and he's like really traumatized, but would he like abandon the girl he loved fully? I don't know. Especially because it comes back to bite him. Cyclops is depressed about the loss of Jean, so he returns to Alkali Lake, and he finds out Jean's alive, and now she's the Phoenix, basically. She's her new personality, and she basically kills him and absorbs his power or something. And basically, Jean is coming back to life, man, and she's so powerful, she's so bad, but she's kind of like not that important at the end of the movie. I don't know. She's just like there. And Magneto goes to recruit her. She goes crazy and threatens to use the cure on him. And it's kind of disturbing. Her personality is just disturbing. She just wants to hurt everybody. And she was so nice before. She was like, she had this delicate power. It was like a restrained power. Oh gosh, I skipped the part of the movie. Oh, did I? Oh no, I didn't. So yeah, in this recruiting scene, Xavier is killed, and in my opinion, the death of Xavier handled in the other two movies at the same quality would have been way more powerful. Was it a good scene? Yes, but we should have had more of Xavier, like, sort of reminiscing before it happened to, like, build the emotion. But it was kind of just, like, a quick thing where, like, Jean comes back, she kills him. It just wasn't enough. Xavier is one of the best characters, but I felt he didn't get the respect in his death. Alright, X-Men know that Magneto is going to attack Alcatraz, which is the headquarters of this pharmaceutical company. There's a kind of like sick scene where he like moves the Golden Gate Bridge to connect to Alcatraz, and all the mutants go attack. And they're using these guns filled with the cure. One thing I didn't get is, I know the guns aren't made of metal, but the cure has a needle on it. So how can Magneto not control the guns? Because they're filled with metal. Because the cure darts have metal on them. It kind of seemed a bit sus to me, a little bit unrealistic. And what I mean by unrealistic is within the universe. Obviously, their superpowers are not real in real life, but I mean within the universe, it's unrealistic he won't be able to control those needles. And the fight ends with Magneto getting injected with the cure, and as much as Magneto's the villain, I'm like, oh no, I did not want to see this. Magneto, if he's going to lose, he needs to lose, he needs to lose going down fighting. I don't want to see him like shrivel and die without his powers. And then this is kind of where Phoenix goes crazy. She's just been sitting there doing nothing, and Wolverine tries to save her, but then she's like, I'm gonna kill everybody now. And then Wolverine stabs her at the end, holds her dead body, and Storm becomes headmistress of the school, and I like that. That was good. Logan is a teacher. The U.S. president appoints Beast as ambassador to the UN. Rogue returns, telling Iceman she's taken the cure, and holds hands skin to skin for the first time. This was cool. I like that. And then we get a very sad scene. Powerless Magneto sitting alone at a park playing chess, which is very characteristic of him. And it's he moves his hand at the metal chess board or the metal chess pieces, and it moves ever so slightly. And you're like, oh yes, good. I didn't want him to lose his powers. This was kind of like the thing that saved this film for me a lot, because I did not want to see that. I'm glad Magneto is too powerful to be controlled. It was really cool. And there's a post-credit scene where Dr. Moira McTaggart, who's the lady from First Class, this scene's kind of confusing, but it's clear that Charles has transferred his conscious to a patient at a hospital that's comatose or something, and he greets her with his voice, and she replies, Charles. So Charles survived, which is cool. I usually don't like stuff like that where they bring the character back, but especially because the death scene wasn't that good, I think it worked. It's a pretty good movie, just a disappointing end to what would have been a great trilogy. It's sort of stripped of everything great about the first two, like the dialogue, the chemistry, the acting, the great direction, the great story. Everything is just kind of brought down to the level of mediocrity. And yeah, there's more CGI, there's better CGI, there's more budget, and that's just proof that's not what makes a great film. Great films may include those things, but they are not the core of a film. The core of a film is primarily the story, backed up by the acting, backed up by the direction. The cinematography, the lighting, etc. The quality, the realism, or surrealism. But yeah, those things are what make the movie. The CGI and the budget are really just things that can enhance, but it never will overcome a mediocre story or mediocre acting or mediocre dialogue. And yeah, in this case it didn't. And I actually found out that this was the most expensive film ever made at the time. So sad. But anyway, that was my review of the X-Men trilogy. I'm sure I will be back next week. I doubt there'll be anything for an in-person show. Thank you. This has been Nima Goldby on KUCI 88.9 Irvine. Thank you. I'll see you next week.